Welcome back, everyone. Hope things are going well. And today we finish our two-part introduction to using user-defined functions. And what we'll do today is take a look at a commission example where we implement a conditional statement. So it's a bit more advanced programming. We're also going to show you how, as soon as you open up a spreadsheet, you can have a message appear or have some sort of calculation occur right away. And that's called event procedures. All that and more coming up today. Okay, so here's our first example today. What I want to do is create a function that determines commissions. Okay, here it is right there, com rate, and then I'm going to times it by the sales to get the commission for this particular person. But it's not that simple. Depending on how much you make, I'm going to have a different commission rate. And we've done something like this already with these if statements from a previous section, but now we're going to do it as a computer program in VBA. And for this example, basically if your sales are over 10,000, I'm going to give you 10% commission. And if they're less than that, I'm going to give you 7%. All right. Now, I'm not even going to show you this answer. I want us to do it from scratch. All right. So I want you to do it with me. Get on that bicycle, fall down if it doesn't work, get back up, you'll get it to work. Trust me. All right, let's start off with a fresh copy of Excel, blank screen, and we'll have a name column. We'll have sales. This is the commission we're going to work out, okay? And I'm not going to be very clever with the names. And we'll make up some sales numbers, 12,000 for this person. Let's make this person's 9,000, 15,300 for this one, and 6,500 for this one. Okay, and as I mentioned, you'd probably say, well, I can do this with that simple if stuff that you taught us before. But if you remember those, as the if statements got more and more complicated and you had to embed one inside of another, it got pretty ugly. So I'm going to show you a different way to program it today. It's our first little introduction into if statements in VBA. So let's get in there. All right, so I press the developer tag. We'll press Visual Basic. Remember what happens here. You have to go to Insert, Module. Okay, and we're going to create our own brand new function. So we're going to start off with the word public and then function. And if you remember what I displayed to you, I called it com rate, and we're going to send it the sales. Now this one isn't a straight formula where you say com rate equals and you're done. This one involves a bit of thinking because depending on the sales, your commission is going to be different. So here's a brand new word, if. And then we're going to say if sales are greater than or equal to 10,000, then, isn't that kind of different? That's a new way to program. If you're familiar with programming, it'll make sense. If you're not, it's the first time, just hopefully follow along. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say com rate equals, and this is going to be the one that's 10%, so 0.1. Then what programmers use is this special word called else. So they're basically saying, if this is true, great. If it isn't, do the next part. So if it's not more than 10,000, let's say it's 6,000, then the com rate is going to be 0.07, 7%. And then the way you finish these end ifs, these if statements, is with an end if, okay? So now, don't worry, we're going to revisit this again in a future lecture, but I wanted to introduce it today just to get your hands in there, just to get an appreciation for what can be created with this if statement. There is our brand new special, invented by us, function that works out commission rates for this particular business. Okay, let's close this off and we'll test it out. So we start off and say equals com rate, beautiful, there it is, bracket, and this one we're going to use C4, and oh, that's only the rate. So remember, we got to times that by the original sales, which is C4, and there's your $1,200. So it's over $10,000, so you get 10%, so that makes sense. And then we'll drag those down, and there's all the remaining answers. So there you see an application of conditional statements, but now with a new way of using real computer programming to handle them. Now, I haven't done this yet, so let me do this with you one time at least. Let's save this. Okay, so we're going to go to File, Save As, and we'll pick somewhere to save it. I'll sneak through and go to my temp drive where I save the material for the course. Now, I'm going to play dumb for a second. I'm going to call this com, and I'm just going to press Save. It's yelling at me. It says, hey, you got macros in here now. You can't just save it like this. You have to save it a special way. So remember, you have to pick the macro enabled workbook. Then it's going to be happy, and we're going to press save. and now it's saved the proper way. Wanted to show you something really neat too when you save. Notice this is a regular spreadsheet. Notice when it's a macro, it adds that little green little image down at the corner, all right, to tell you the difference between these two. And this one always ends with .xlsx, and this one now is .xlsm for macro. Next up is the concept of event procedures. And what that means is when something happens, like you open something or you activate something, do something. So let me show you an example. I'm going to open this file for the interest example, but what's this? It's got a little welcome screen. So on opening, I've activated a special command, a procedure to do something. Okay, so that's what we want to show you today as our second part of today's lecture. All right, so let's get our hands dirty and do this one together. And I'm not going to do anything fancy like type in that interest example or whatever. Let's just type in the word demo. That's it. Okay, that's our program. And now what we're going to do is code the event where we open the workbook and something appears like a message box or something like that. All right, so you know this is going to involve coding. So we're going to go to Developer. We're going to go to Visual Basic, and we're in the Underground. Now, basically, something's going to happen to the workbook. So let's double click on it right now and see what happens. Not much yet. Okay, so what are these down things here? Combo boxes. Oh, there's the word workbook. Why don't we oh, look at that. Workbook open. That's a good start. Now over here on the right hand side, there are other events associated with workbooks. There's open. You're going to, when you do your sort of exercise, use the activate one. There's all kinds of other ones I've never used before. These are other events associated with the workbook. We're just going to stick with this one, and we're going to type in a special command. That little box or message that you saw appear at the beginning, that has a special name. That's called a message box. Yes, just like that. And then you can type in whatever you want. And then comma, and it even gives you a choice of little symbols so you can have appear when the box appears, this message box. That's it. Okay, you can do more if you want, but for now, that's the code necessary to have the workbook appear and then have that message box show up. All right, let's close this off. All right, now we're going to need to save this because then we're going to need to reopen it to make it actually work. Okay, so I'll go up here, save it, save that somewhere on your hard drive. You know how you should have a folder where you're keeping all the demos for the course as we're working through all the examples. Okay, I'm going to sneak in here. I'm just going to call it demo. And again, it yells at me. Okay, so don't forget, you need to save it as a macro-enabled workbook. Now we're good. Okay, and you can exit out of this now and then try to load it back in. All right, so there's our macro-enabled workbook. I'm going to double click on it. And as soon as it starts up, it should give us that little message. Now, we've got our security on, so when I press Enable Content, there's our welcome, and there's that little critical symbol. All right, isn't that kind of neat? So there's two quick examples, two different types of things. We've got some conditional statements thrown into VBA just to give you a taste for it. We're still not really into it totally, but just you're getting a taste for what's going to be involved with this kind of thing called VBA programming. Are you up for a bit of practice? In the resources for today's lecture, I have this PDF file which indicates two problems. The first one is like the first one I did with you guys, where we have if statements necessary to determine, in this case, tax rate. The second one practices the event procedures, but this one practices the event procedures on worksheets as opposed to the workbook. So you're going to do a slightly different event. Now, give them a try. The solutions are also in today's resources. Okay, so hopefully that'll give you a good idea of what we've covered today. Thanks for listening. Take care. We'll see you in the next lecture.